Welcome to the Three Martini Lunch. Grab a stool next to Greg Columbus of Radio America and Jim Garrity of National Review. Three Martinis coming up.
So glad you're with us for the Wednesday edition of the Three Martini Lunch. Grab a bar stool. We got a lot to talk about today, both in terms of elections this year, future elections potentially, and just once again, the floundering state of the Democratic Party. We had all good martinis yesterday, Jim, and we actually do have a good one today. It was a little bit tougher of a search, but we'll be talking about how the Democrats have not done well in retaining or recruiting voters over the last 5 years or so. We'll also be taking a look at the political fortunes of one Andrew Cuomo and the political figure he's hoping will rescue him in his bid to become New York City mayor. Probably not who you would have suspected at the beginning of this campaign. And we'll be taking a look at the maybe future political prospects of Kamala Harris, but it's not looking good, even in her home state. So, Jim, a lot of political fodder, and we're now less than 3 months from Election Day 2025 already. It's crazy.
Can't wait. The prospects for the Virginia Republicans is not looking great right now. Still time to turn it around, but my colleague Audrey Fahlberg did some good reporting, and I know it's going to shock you, Greg. Virginia Republicans don't all get along, and as we all know, nothing helps a party more than infighting. It's a great distraction. Why waste time criticizing the Democrats when there's so much you can criticize about each other after the primaries?
Yeah, the only thing better than infighting is public infighting, which they've also gotten a lot. Last poll I saw, though, Winsome Sears within 7, but she's still not at 40%. So not where you want to be in mid to late August, that's for sure. All right, well, we'll get to Cuomo, and we'll get to Kamala, and we'll get to the Democratic Party's current state in just a moment. But if you are looking at those numbers as a Democrat, you're probably going to want to reach for an adult beverage. But before you do that, remember, your liver is the second largest organ in your body, and it's responsible for more than 500 functions. But for some reason, liver health doesn't always get the attention it deserves. But now there's Dose for your liver, Dose Daily, formulated to cleanse your liver of unwanted elements, aid digestion, and maintain your body's filter.
Remember, your liver produces and regulates your cholesterol. It stores your vitamins and minerals. It impacts your digestive and metabolic health. It affects your health in all kinds of different ways. And this science-backed formula promotes liver function, aids digestion, eases bloating, and can even boost your energy level.
It also reduces brain fog, gives you better sleep, and it tastes good. Support your health with Dose Daily. Save 25% on your first month when you subscribe at dosedaily.co/3ml or enter the code 3ml at checkout. Please note the 25% discount applies only to subscription orders, not one-time purchases. Cancel anytime, no hassle. That's dosedaily.co/3ml to get 25% off your first monthly subscription with the code 3ML. All right, Jim, yesterday we talked about the paltry fundraising numbers for the Democrats. As of the end of June, the last quarterly numbers that came out, they had $15 million on hand at the Democratic National Committee compared to $80 million at the Republican National Committee. Well, it's not getting any better when it comes to recruiting and retaining voters who normally vote for Democrats. According to a New York Times analysis of voter registration data, Democrats are losing voters by significant margins as Republicans are becoming increasingly popular. The trend is occurring across blue states, red states, and battleground states. The New York Times looked at data from L2, a nonpartisan firm that compiles voter, consumer, and constituent data, which found that for the first time since 2018, Republicans gained more voters than Democrats in 2024. And between 2020 and 2024, Democrats lost around 2.1 million registered voters in the 30 states that allow people to register under a political party, as well as Washington, D.C. Meanwhile, Republicans gained 2.4 million. There's still more registered Democrats than Republicans nationwide, but a 4.5 million voter shift. Jim, I think that can possibly explain what we saw in the results in 2024. And given the depression on the Democrat side and how they flail on everything and take the most radical position just to spite Trump, even on some no-brainers like crime and who's playing on which sports teams, the Democrats have still not stopped the bleeding here.
Yeah, earlier in the week we talked about those donations, the DNC being down, and you can find ways to, if not hand wave it away, you can point out, well, this is an off year. couple 100 million people vote in a presidential election in our country, several million in a whole bunch of different, of our larger states. The fraction of voters who are political donors is very small. And any popular candidate, anybody with a certain degree of charisma, any with a certain degree of, being able to put together some sort of catchy or resonant message, they have good fundraising. So you can find ways for a Democrat to not panic about the fundraising situation. This one should be a much bigger deal because how you register to vote is a very big deal in people's sense of identity, right? And when people talk about polling samples and they argue about how much of your sample should be Republicans, how much should be Democrats, how much should be independents, et cetera, there's an argument that some people are very wishy-washy and it can change over the course of a year. It can change, pretty rapidly in response to events. If Republicans are having a very bad news cycle, the idea is certain people don't identify as Republicans as much. If they're having a good news cycle, then the people identify Republicans as more. Party registration takes some effort to change. Now, you and I are somewhat strangers to this. Virginia does not register by party. So when people are saying, well, are you a Republican? I'm like, well, nobody registers by party in this state. So it's kind of hard to say, And in fact, in that sense, I describe myself as, how would Pence do it? Christian, conservative, or Republican in that order? Something in that ballpark. Party ID is actually fairly low in my mind. But to some people, it's a very big deal. And my guess is that if you change your party registration, that says something because it takes effort. That's not just something like clicking a button. You do have to go and, fill out a little form or whatever it is. So the fact, and immediately after the election, I think it was Shadi Ahmadi of the Washington Post said, look, when it was very clear that Harris was going to lose, was going to go 0-for-7 in those swing states, and Democrats are going to have disappointing down ticket effects as well. It's like, look, it's now, we've been having this argument for 4 years now. The Democrats are a hectoring, nagging party, that they are one that is not, people feel like it's going to help them get to where they want to go in life. It sees them as an obstacle to where they want to go in life. They are one that is constantly telling your characterization of Elizabeth Warren as the HOA president who's telling you that your mailbox is 13 inches from the corner and from the curb instead of 12 inches. Like, I laugh, and a lot of our listeners laugh, because we get it, because we've dealt with both that HOA president type person, and we've dealt with Elizabeth Warren, and we've seen her, and we've seen that kind of just like hectoring and constantly telling you what's wrong with you. And we've joked about Obama and his constant expression of how you've disappointed him again, America. Donald Trump is never going to tell you that he's disappointed in you. He may drive you crazy in a whole bunch of other ways, but that's not, the sense of arrogance and superiority is not the vibe that is given off by Republicans these days. Some might argue we need a little bit more of that. We need to have a slightly higher standard, but there is not this vibe of condescension. There is not this condescension. David Brooks, not the most perfect analyst of politics. So thinking of the spectacular crease in the pants of Barack Obama. But he had a pretty good column recently where he talked about America's class divisions and the degree to which the educated, the college educated have kind of segregated themselves off. And he made the argument that, you look at the outcomes between educated and non-educated, it's actually comparable to the effects of Jim Crow. Right? Now, if you're a Democrat, that should send a chill down your spine. That's actually a really terrible way of saying, really, to a majority of the American electorate, you're not like us. You're not with the rest of us. We're in a separate group from you. We're better than you, and we're going to tell you how to live your lives. Unsurprisingly, that's not a message that doesn't work very well. So if you had to ask me, why are this about 4 million votes coast to coast that the Democrats have lost in terms of voter registration, I think that's a big part of it. I think that in the end, they've adopted an identity that lots of Americans are like, that's not me. And as a result of it, they're either going to register with the Republicans, or they're simply saying, I'm going to register as independent or unaffiliated because I just don't feel like this party represents my interests anymore.
No, that's an excellent point. I think Ronald Reagan summed it up well. I didn't leave the Democratic Party. The Democratic Party left me. You think about how Texas is the Republicans anyway, trying to redraw the districts down there. What used to be deep blue areas along that border, those people didn't just all of a sudden wake up and decide to become Republicans. It's because the Democrats didn't do anything. In fact, they exacerbated the problem at the border. And so where else are you going to go if you're those people along the border there? Same thing. It's the reason Trump won Arizona. Absolutely. No question about it. And so when the Democratic Party lets you down on that, on cultural issues, inflation and constantly meddling in every detail of your life, getting you fired if you don't get a shot or you say the wrong pronoun or whatever, people are just sick of them. All right, Democrats, if you're really struggling with this and it's like having a deleterious effect on your health, it's time to go see a doctor. And whether it's your overdue dental cleaning, the annual checkup you've been postponing, or maybe just a skin issue you've noticed, ZocDoc makes it easy to find the right doctor and to book online. You can probably even get it done before this ad ends. ZocDoc is a free app and website where you can search and compare high-quality, in-network doctors and click to instantly book an appointment.
You can filter for doctors who take your insurance, are located nearby, are a good fit for any medical need you may have, and you can see if they are highly rated by verified patients. Now, once you find the right doctor, you can see their actual appointment openings, choose a time slot that works for you, and click to instantly book a visit. Appointments made through ZocDoc usually happen fast, typically within just 24 to 72 hours of booking, and more often than not, you can even get same-day appointments.
Yes, Jim and I have both used ZocDoc to find doctors, and we've also used it to book appointments. It works so easily. Stop putting off those doctor's appointments and go to ZocDoc.com/3ML to find and instantly book a top-rated doctor today. That's ZocDoc.com/3ML. ZocDoc.com/3ML. All right, Jim, on to, I think this is the first crazy martini out of two crazies today. We are, as we said, less than 3 months away from Election Day. That's true in Virginia. It's true in New Jersey. It's true in New York City. And everywhere there's going to be a general election in November. And, of course, in New York City, we've been talking a lot about the rise of Zohran Mamdani, the avowed socialist, and some of the policies are just downright communist, like ending private property and things like that. In the latest polls, things are not looking good for the non-Mamdani candidates. In fact, in the latest AARP, New York Gotham Polling and Analytics poll, Mamdani has 41.8% of the vote. Andrew Cuomo at 23.4%, Curtis Sliwa 16.5%, incumbent Mayor Eric Adams running as an independent 8.8% support. Then they start to look at, well, what if the different people dropped out? If Cuomo drops out, Mamdani rises to 48.4%, and he's ahead of Sliwa by more than 27. If Adams drops out, Mamdani leads Cuomo by 14 points, and if Sliwa drops out, Mamdani leads Cuomo by 16.8%. Not looking good no matter what, but Cuomo, of course, believes that if he can get it down to two candidates, that's his best chance for getting over the top somehow, even though he got slaughtered in the Democratic primary. But Cuomo thinks he might have an ace up his sleeve. He won't admit it publicly, Jim, but he's talking about it openly with donors at private functions out there in the very Tony Hamptons. Southampton, as Politico calls it, the ultra-wealthy Long Island enclave 80 miles east of New York City. And the political figure that Andrew Cuomo thinks might ride to his rescue is Donald Trump. According to this story, Cuomo said this. They have audio allegedly of this at this fundraiser out in the Hamptons. Politico does not provide the audio, so I will reluctantly do my best, Andrew Cuomo, to do the audio here. Jim?
Excellent. This is one of your absolute strong suits when it comes to this podcast, Greg.
We can minimize the Sliwa vote because he'll never be a serious candidate. And Trump himself, as well as top Republicans, will say the goal is to stop Mamdani, and you'll be wasting your vote on Sliwa. So I feel good about that, unquote. So, Jim, I don't know if this is coming. The idea is that Trump still loves New York City, and he doesn't want a communist, obviously, to be the mayor. I'm not sure how far away Cuomo would be given the leftward avalanche of the Democratic Party these days. I'm sure Trump doesn't like Cuomo given all the COVID dust-ups and everything else, so I'm sure he's not going to be all that excited to endorse him, and it probably wouldn't do any good anyway. So given the margins that we're seeing in the race right now, I'm not exactly sure a Trump endorsement is what vaults you to victory in New York City, but your mileage may vary.
There is a chance that what Cuomo is describing is a triple bank shot. But before I dive into that, Greg, Dana Carvey once said that his George H.W. Bush impression was 50% Mr. Rogers, 50% John Wayne. You know, that, yeah. Well, we're going to do what is prudent here. I'm not going to rush to any judgment. He does all the hand gestures and all that. I've noticed that your Andrew Cuomo is sing-songy, but kind of a whine, being played at half speed. You know, da 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 da. Yeah. It's going to be a song. Someone's going to auto-tune it, and it's going to turn into a huge hit. But when you went through those polling numbers, all of this idea of, well, this person should get out, first of all, like, if anybody should get out, it is Eric Adams, except where he's now at such a low level. It's not like, how do you want to allocate his 7%? Who's that going to, help that? It's now gotten so small. It's not like there's a huge benefit if he gets that much out. And this whole idea of Sliwa is not a serious candidate. Yes, he's in third place. But his third place is not that far behind Cuomo's second place. Like, oh my goodness, I'm all the way up here at 23%. He's all the way down there at 16.5%. As we know, that's a huge difference. That's, kind of. All right. So what is going on here besides Andrew Cuomo being a unhinged narcissist who leaves a trail of slime everywhere he goes, and the idea that he believes he's about so let's say Trump comes out and says, yes, I endorse Andrew Cuomo. Does this actually help Andrew Cuomo? Obviously New York is not a huge full of Republican place. Would New York City Republicans, given the choice between voting for Curtis Sliwa, whatever else you want to say about him, he's got, as I see it, three great strengths in this election. The first is that he's not Eric Adams, he's not Andrew Cuomo, and he's not Mamdani, right? Those are some really underrated traits in a mayoral candidate. Would New York Republicans concur? And would they say, okay, I'm going to give up my support of Sliwa? And would they do it for, never mind just like, say, a generic Democrat, voting for Andrew Cuomo, as Sliwa memorably put it, slapping fannies and killing grannies. Like, this is a really infamous Democrat who Republicans across the country put a lot of effort into getting out of office. And the idea we're going to turn around and say, hey, put this guy back into Gracie Mansion, does not strike me as an easy sell. So my next thought is, okay, is Cuomo saying this because he thinks this will eventually get Trump, and at some point Trump will jump on Truth Social and say, what are you, crazy? I'm not going to endorse Cuomo. Cuomo's an SOB, blah, blah, blah. And does that get Trump to demonize Cuomo? And does that make Democrats who are already leaning towards because for a long time, particularly during pandemic, the idea was that Trump was the bad leader and Cuomo was the good leader. And we had good, objective news sources telling us this, like Chris Cuomo on CNN every night. Maybe this is actually meant to get Trump to denounce him. And that would theoretically help him. Then the next, I'm wondering if there's some way to get Trump, reverse psychology, it might make sense. But I genuinely think Andrew Cuomo believes that, because Trump doesn't want Mamdani to become mayor, he will see he has no choice. He'll conclude that Sliwa is too far back and he will endorse me. I believe there's it's in the Free Press. Here's the thing. If Mamdani wins, anybody who loves New York City is going to be crying. This is bad news. If you're a Republican anywhere other than New York City, you're looking at this and saying, yes, because, Nancy Pelosi was getting pretty long in the tooth. AOC, I think she's kind of past her prime. She's not excited. Here is the new left villain. Here is the new worst case scenario, most far left person. Maybe you can compare like Dennis Kucinich or something like that. But we have a really far left person, and he's going to be in a position where even if he's not got cooperation of the governor, even if he's not got cooperation of everybody on the city council, he will find a way to do damage. He will drive away businesses. He will make people want to move out of New York City. He will probably be very ineffective on crime, and he will probably say, oh, I'm getting tough on crime. Here's my arrest warrant for Bibi Netanyahu. Finally, one last point. Because I grew up not too far from New York City. The Hamptons are really on the east end of Long Island. So it's pretty, yes, obviously a lot of wealthy New York City people go out there. But it just says something that here we are, it's August, and, Cuomo is campaigning many, many miles away from New York City.
Most of my knowledge of the Hamptons is from Weekend at Bernie's, so I don't know a lot about the whole situation there. But yes, he's not fundraising in the city, even though some of the people there might be from the city. But if you're a Republican in New York City, and assuming you look at those four candidates, you're like, well, obviously I'm going for Curtis Sliwa. Even if Trump comes in and says, for practical reasons, we need to go with Cuomo, do the Sliwa voters even listen to that? I don't think that I would.
The scenario of breaking all your principles and voting for a guy who you think is an absolute slimeball is that you've just helped play a role in the redemption story and the comeback story of a guy who's a complete slimeball. Like the consolation prize of not having Mamdani. Like you'd like to have a better, there are certain people out there who would say, look, I want to do anything to stop Mamdani, even, support Cuomo. And if that's your call, fine, it's a free country, do what you want. But like, I really feel like there are some really bad people in politics, and Andrew Cuomo is one of them. And none of us, if he gets back into office, it's not like Andrew Cuomo is going to say, I am chastened. I have learned hard lessons about my wrongdoing. No! He's going to say, I am indestructible. Kneel before Zod to honor the late Terrence Stamp. Like, he's not going to come back, better, wiser, or he's going to come back even more convinced that he can get away with anything. So, and keep in mind, before, Andrew Cuomo was groping armed state troopers. Now, even Ted Kennedy would be like, whoa, that's pretty extreme out there. That's dangerous,
By the way, Eric Adams is leading by less than a point over undecided. So it's neck and neck for fourth place between Adams and undecided.
Greg, say what you want. Undecided has never enacted a bad policy. Undecided has never let you down. No scandals. Really, there's just nothing there at all. So maybe you could say undecided is not a particularly decisive candidate. But other than that,
Well, given the crop of candidates, I'm a little bit surprised Undecided's not doing a whole lot better in this particular one. But
even Undecided is underperforming. That is a demonstration of the politics of 2025.
Yes, exactly. Well, when you look at the polling numbers and you see pretty much a commie at the top by a wide margin and Cuomo's in second place, your outlook for New York City probably isn't that bright unless there's a major change in those numbers. And so you're probably going to want some help. And this is an ad by BetterHelp. And these days, feels like there's advice for everything, from physical health and things like cold plunges to mental health items like gratitude journals, or maybe just giving up your screens for a while. But with the internet and information overload about mental health and wellness, it can be a struggle to know what's true and what actions to take these days. And so using trusted resources and talking to live therapists can get you personalized recommendations that'll help you break through the noise. And that's where BetterHelp comes in.
With more than 30,000 therapists, BetterHelp is the world's largest online therapy platform, having served more than 5 million people all around the world. And it works with an average rating of 4.9 out of 5 for a live session based on more than 1.7 million client reviews. Not just a handful of people all saying, yeah, it was great. It's convenient, too. You can join a session with a therapist at the click of a button, helping you fit therapy into your busy life. And remember, you can switch therapists at any time.
As the largest online therapy provider in the world, BetterHelp can provide access to mental health professionals with a diverse variety of expertise. Talk it out with BetterHelp. Our listeners get 10% off their first month at betterhelp.com/3ml. That's better, HELP.com/3ml. All right, Jim, on to our final martini, our second crazy martini. And people are already looking at 2028. We're still 3 months away almost from Election Day 2025, and we got all sorts of midterms. But of course, the next presidential race, particularly since there will not be an incumbent president on the ballot, just too tantalizing for people not to start talking about. Politico with the story. California Democrats would take Gavin Newsom over Kamala Harris in a 2028 presidential primary, according to a new poll from Politico and its partners. Between the two high-profile Californians, the governor leads the former vice president 25% to 19% among the state's registered Democratic voters and Democratic-leaning independents. Then the analysis says the finding reflects in part success Newsom has had asserting himself as a leader of the Democrats' resistance to President Trump's agenda, from fighting against gerrymandering in Texas with his own gerrymandered map to his fight against ICE raids in the state. So, Kamala went on Colbert and wouldn't really give a serious answer about a whole lot, but basically said, democracy is too damaged. I'm not going to be in the game for a while. So she might not even be a candidate in 2028. And if these numbers continue, I'm sure she won't be, especially after what happened back in 2020 or really 2019. So what do you make of the fact that her star is continuing to fade while even the deeply flawed Gavin Newsom seems to have a small edge over her?
Yeah, this is actually more significant or interesting than you'd expect of a presidential primary poll in the summer of 2025, trying to ask people who they're going to prefer in early 2028. I think, it's not crazy to think she doesn't run in 2028. In fact, I think probably the runes, the chicken innards, whatever crystal ball, it's all kind of pointing to not that, because of all the potential candidates in 2028. She would be one that, yes, she has high name recognition. Yes, I assume her fundraising network is still largely intact. But she'd face a whole bunch of questions right out of the gate. What did you know about Biden? And when did you notice that he was, starting to get old? How did you spend all that money and not only fall short, you didn't win any of the big swing states. What you didn't win last time when you didn't have to go through a primary, and you seemed like you were, leading or close in the polls. And what's going to be different this time? I'm always wary of any candidate where this time the American people realize what a terrible mistake they made by not voting for me. And they will have this grand awakening, and full of regret, they will come and vote for me a second time. And yes, Doug Mastriano, I'm talking to you. All of these who by the way was really, who's the Stacey Garrity character who's going to run against the governor of Pennsylvania? You flopped against him last time. You're the same guy. So I don't understand why you're expecting dramatically different differences this time around. And when she says democracy is broken and stuff like that, that doesn't sound like somebody who's itching to jump back into a presidential politics again. The flip side of Gavin Newsom, my colleague Jeff Blahar has a column out basically saying that there's no way that Newsom's going to be the nominee, and no, he's not really a front runner. I generally agree, but I would point out you can see the outlines of the Newsom strategy. And it appears like there's a logic to it. And that is, he's going to fight with Donald Trump on every possible issue that he can. He's doing this big social media push, including ones that have superimposed him on the shooting in Butler, Pennsylvania. And his entire social media feed is now just relentless trolling of Trump and his supporters. And there's an argument that when Democrats are asked, who do you like as the Democratic nominee in 2028? The first person they will think of is whoever they've seen fighting Trump lately. By the way, this is a terrible way to select your presidential nominee. This is but that this just kind of this gut reaction and that this kind of creates a self-fulfilling prophecy that if you're in the news the most, you have the most name recognition, you become one of the front runners, you take up all the media oxygen in the room, and so the other candidates can't really get it, and you stay there. One other detail over by the good folks over at the Daily Wire, Newsom's team is targeting a series of the ads only at people outside of California. I think it is very clear that the governor of California is going to put an enormous amount of effort into getting the Democratic nomination between now. I mean, it already started 6 months ago, but from now until the Iowa caucuses or wherever the Democrats choose to start. Greg, you probably have noticed California's had some problems lately. Big chunk of the Los Angeles burned down. They got a giant budget deficit. Businesses are fleeing the country. Homelessness and crime really bad in the big cities. High-speed rail still not built. Still not laid any track. There are a bunch of really big problems. And just as I thought it was good that Kamala Harris was not going to run for governor as a consolation prize, that you shouldn't do the job if you don't want it, if you shouldn't run for the job if you don't want to do it. I think Gavin Newsom is not interested in doing the job that much for the next couple. He really wants to be president. And I think that's very bad for the state. And I kind of feel like somebody in California should be pointing out that, Gavin, if you really are that focused on being president, maybe you should step down. If you're not interested in doing your day job, you probably should let somebody else who actually does want to be governor do that. So we'll see how that happens. But I can see, Newsom is, I'm going to be the angriest, toughest. I'm going to be the fighter in this race. And I'm going to do better than everybody else when I do that. That could work. That's not a crazy strategy. I think you and I agree there are very serious flaws in this guy. But I think if you're trying to think about what's going to appeal to Democratic primary voters and get small, grassroots donor dollars, that's probably going to work pretty well.
Well, it might, certainly for a while. We'll see who emerges. He is a straight white male. And so in the Democratic Party, those are three things that work against you.
He's a womanizing straight white male. Keep that in mind. Oh, actually, now that I think about it, that is kind of the Democrats' kind. Bill Clinton approved.
All true. But yes, I mean, every politician, when things aren't going well, tries to change the subject. But Gavin Newsom will literally talk about anything other than what he's actually supposed to be talking about as governor of California with the myriad of problems out there. And so if he does emerge as a strong candidate, he will be a target-rich environment.
Greg, when you and I have to pre-tape an episode and we're looking for topics, you ready for a really challenging one? 3 Democrats that we would not vote for, but that we think would actually be strong candidates in 2028. And I bet you it'd be none of the big ones right now. That I remember during COVID looking at these states that actually had the lowest infection rates and the lowest hospitalization rates and all that stuff. And it was Ige out in Hawaii. Like they were like the ones you've never heard of. And instead, Cuomo and Newsom were getting all the press. And there was a strong, and Phil Murphy in New Jersey. And in fact, they had some of the highest rates of infections. So my point was the mainstream media isn't just biased in favor of Democrats. They're biased in favor of the wrong Democrats. They actually go for the hype of the biggest names and actually ignore Democrats who, based on outcomes, are generating better results. So maybe that'd be an interesting topic for us to chew over sometime.
Yeah, well, there are people who could be tough to beat. I wouldn't want to be president necessarily. But yes, more electable and less baggage because folks like Harris, folks like Newsom, even Buttigieg at this point, bringing a lot of baggage to the table. And I'm sure there's a lot of other people. Not sure if we'll get 24 candidates like we did back in 2020, but I'm sure the field won't be small, given the fact that it's an open seat. So, Jim, on that note, happy Wednesday. We'll do it all again tomorrow.
See you tomorrow, Greg.
Jim Garrity, National Review. I'm Greg Corombos of Radio America. Thanks so much for being with us today. Please be sure to subscribe to the 3 Martini Lunch podcast. If you don't already, tell your friends about us as well. Thanks also for your 5-star ratings and your kind reviews. They really do help us out a lot, so please keep those coming. Also, get us on your home devices. All you have to say is play 3 Martini Lunch podcast. Follow us both on X. Jim is at Jim Garrity. I'm at Greg Corombos. Have a great Wednesday, and join us again Thursday for the next 3 Martini Lunch.